And we're live.
All right, live. Good day, everyone, wherever you are. Good to see you. Good to be with you during this very sacred Losar period. As you know, the time between Losar, which began March 3rd, until the full moon on the 18th, that's a very powerful time for practice in the Tibetan tradition. And so it's auspicious for us to gather today and talk about the Buddha nature, which is at the heart of our practice. I'm glad to see you all. Kaisu, Stephanie, Charlotte. Hi, it's been a while. In talking about Buddha nature today, our real nature, our most fundamental home, really. I'm also following along with our Teaching Tuesdays series, where we have been reading, actually Nathaniel has been guiding us beautifully through the Dharmadhatu Sutra, the sutra on the indivisibility of the Dharmadhatu. Because the Dharmadhatu, which it can also be understood as our Buddha nature, our real nature, our true home, our ultimate state, and so on, seed of liberation, is said to be a part of everything. If you remember, it's part of everything. So it being part of everything, as you may remember, those of you who were there, how Manjushri says, how can I possibly talk about this thing? Because there's nothing that is not engaged in the Dharmadhatu. And Nathaniel's been doing a beautiful job with this new, relatively recently translated sutra. I never read it until a few years ago, and I'm quite fascinated by its resonance with Dzogchen, the great completeness. And Renee has been introducing the wisdoms associated with the four boundless states. So it's a very wisdom-oriented Teaching Tuesday period. And now we have the custom on Sundays of echoing a bit for those who don't come on Tuesdays and just for our own reinforcement of understanding this. So the Dharmadhatu is everywhere. And we fail to recognize that everywhere-ness insofar as we split ourselves off from the world of objects, persons. We feel self, other, we feel here, there. No blame. That's really how our senses are set up. Our senses, from the Buddhist perspective, are very, very deceptive. In the great completeness, as you know, in Dzogchen, we attune ourselves as we can to a state of wholeness, a state of completeness, which is a state in which we are not cut off and not separate. And we seek also to be not separate from our own nature, that we're never separate from it, but we seek to be more palpably present to it. One of the Gampopa, author of Jewel Ornament of Liberation, one of the early great figures in the Tibetan tradition, a student of Milarepa, reminds us that our situation as ordinary being is that we are, ordinary being is the English translation for a word in Tibetan that literally means separate from, sosogebo, or individuated from. And Gampopa deliciously points out that as ordinary beings, what we are separate from is recognition of our own nature. This is very poignant because our own nature is always there. It's as close as experience itself, lived experience itself, and yet we are unaware of it. And that unawareness is profoundly pernicious, according to the Buddhist traditions. Nothing hinders waking more than remaining unaware of what is already there, right there, without fuss or frills. I love to quote this and sometimes sing it. It's a phrase from the All-Creating Majesty, which we have been reading, hearing studying with Lama Tenzin, all creating Majesty, one of the great Dzogchen Tantras. And Longchenpa himself, Longchen Rabchem, cites it in his Chingzi, his precious treasury of the Dharma Dhatu. So the Dharma Dhatu is a very central matter, being not recognizing, not being even aware, never mind having full-on direct experience of our real nature, not maintaining some kind of awareness of this as a possibility for us is a big hindrance to our path from the perspective of Dzogchen. And this is what makes us ordinary. This is also what liberates us. When Nagarjuna praises the Dharmadhatu in his Praise of the Dharmadhatu Sutra, which we have also been reading together over time, in his first verse, he says, this is something that's in everyone, in all beings. And when we don't realize it, we go round and round in the samsaric swirl. And when we recognize it, we're free. So it's pretty central. The Dharmadhatu, the Buddha nature. Do we feel, do you feel that you could awaken in this life? That's a deep imprint, that question. And many of you will remember that, the first time I met Elza Rinpoche and was translating his one-on-one conversations with our small group. And the first question he asked the first person was, do you feel you can awaken in this lifetime? She was a spiritual practitioner, but she wasn't Buddhist. And she was, and I was not much different, was a little bit like. So for us practitioners, it's an important question. I think it's a kind of pith instruction to look into your mind every now and then. Do I really feel I could do this? Whatever this is, which turns out to be not much of anything but getting out of our own way. Now that, of course, is a strong Dzogchen perspective. It's also a Chan, a Zen perspective, very much emphasizing Buddha nature. So we hear about this a lot in our, as we get acquainted with the body of literature and practices that are oriented toward Dzogchen experience, that always give us a chance to recognize this larger nature, a nature of wholeness. What would it mean to engage this? What are the ways in which you feel separate? When we feel lonely, we feel separate. When we are angry, as we talked about in our discussion of the elements and the fire elements, we consume everything and everyone's energy around us, and we're left alone in a kind of desert. Being angry it may feel powerful, but you're a bomb going off and everybody's staying away. We feel separate when we feel misunderstood. We feel separate when we block ourselves from our own experience. Maybe block ourselves is too strong, because we don't know. We're just out of touch with our own feelings. That's a big deal, especially in this culture. We walk around in our heads. Buddha nature, our true nature, will not be found in our heads. That is to say, it will not be found by worrying about it. But how will it be found? Longchenpa says that wisdom pervades the body, as I like to remind you. He also says that only wisdom recognizes wisdom, really. Conceptual thought does not. We know that the perfection of wisdom we often hear is inexpressible. Masamjame Shero Parochin. And we sing our homage to the perfection of wisdom, sometimes unsaid, unthought, undescribed. But it cannot be thought or said or talked beyond talk, thought, or story. But it can be experienced. And it's experienced most easily when we are able to relax into the larger ocean of being that we are. An example I saw on Twitter the other day, someone's young child came home from school and said that what they had learned, the teacher had said that think of a pond with fish in it. The fish are all your thoughts and feelings. Try to be the pond. It's quite a lovely example. So we, in our practice, in our lives, we're trying to be the pond. The pond is the ocean of our natural vastness. Looking at the sky, you get a certain feeling. Looking out over the ocean, you get a certain feeling. Relaxing is important. Being easy is important. So we always start a session, as we will at 11 o'clock, with some kind of resting, some kind of opening. We know that good ideas come to us when we're relaxed, when we're at ease. We can fall in love when we're relaxed and at ease. We have a very effortful dualistic culture, and it's important to remind ourselves of the value of ease. And that ease is a gateway to our being able also eventually to relax into our own state. What's also very interesting and helpful is that, in fact, all of our practices are opportunities to be more at ease, to see if we can feel less separate from what we are observing, what we are, as you said many times, if you look at anything, can you separate your knowing from what you know? You're seeing from what you see. You're hearing from what you hear. You're hearing my voice. Can you separate your hearing from what you hear? It's a way of coming into wholeness, of dissolving the sense of, okay, I'm a hearer, I'm a seer over here, and then there's something over there that somehow I managed to leap over the chasm and connect with. So some of the sutras that we've been looking at with Nathaniel's help on our Teaching Tuesdays, and one that the Lama Namgyal talks about, I want to bring forward in relationship to the Dharmadhatu Sutra. Bahya, you remember the Sutra of Bahya. He is so eager to get the teaching. He interrupts Buddha 3 times. Buddha is on his alms round. And Buddha says, this is not the time, Bahya. Bahya says, impermanence is imminent. You must teach me now. So this is what Buddha says. Then, Bahya, you should train yourself in this way. So our ears prick up. Here's Buddha giving a pith instruction to someone who earnestly desires it. Ideal student. In reference to the seen, there will be only the seen. Not some separate viewer of the seen. In reference to the heard, only the heard. In reference to the sensed, only the sensed. In reference to the cognized, only the cognized. This is how you should train yourself. And the point is, Buddha continues, so let's reflect on that for a minute. There's a famous Zen koan where a student sees a flag flapping in the wind, and the teacher says, is that the wind flapping the flag, Or is it your mind flapping? That always caught my attention. I read it decades ago for the first time, and I was like, huh? Huh? He's saying something, but what is he saying? One thing he's saying is that in the scene, there is only the scene. That would have to mean that there's either only the object or only, in some case, some sense, the subject. There's only seeing. There's only being. So what is the point of this? Buddha will reveal it just a few sentences later. When for you there is only the seen in reference to the seen, only the heard in reference to the heard, only the sensed in reference to the sensed, only the cognized in reference to the cognized, then, dear student, there is no you in connection with that. I think we could equally say there is no you separate from that. There is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder, nor between the two. All is an open circle, an open domain. And all of it is part of your experience, part of your knowing, part of your hearing, part of your sensing, part of your cognizing. There is nothing outside that. How do we end up feeling so alienated? Everything is as close to us as our own sensory and mind experiences. It's tremendous intimacy. You know, if you've watched or been around His Holiness the Dalai Lama, other great teachers, they're wonderful to watch because they give us clues. There's always a sense of, I want to say, friendliness, intimacy. Dalai Lama hold hand. Often when he meets someone, look you in the eyes, looks everyone in the eyes, and you just know that somehow he's not doing this in the way that ordinary mind does this. Ordinary mind is a dualistic mind. In dualism, in twoishness is dualistic. There's no twoishness in terms of the Dharma Dhatu. We can understand the Dharma Dhatu as the domain of our experience, and nothing is outside that domain. So there's no you separate from the whole body of your experience. It doesn't mean things are blended together. Wholeness is not a case of a mishmash, like the melting pot, supposedly, of US immigration. It's not like that. Wholeness is like things reflected in water. They're reflected quite precisely, quite clearly. The moon looks like the moon in water. Your face looks like your face in water. They don't get mixed up, but they're all watery. The nature of any reflection in water is water. That's kind of clear. It's a great example. For me, it's very powerful. Think about it a lot. And in the same way, anything that you are seeing or hearing or touching or tasting, thinking about, it's a reflection in the water of your mind, the ocean of your knowing. You think about it, kind of can't be otherwise. But we don't live as if this were so. And this point that Buddha makes in the Bahia Sutra, when there is no you there, you are neither here, nor yonder, nor between the two. It's so simple. And that, he says, is the end of stress, the end of suffering. That's the path. So in the Dharma Dhatu Sutra, in the pith instruction there, you will remember, there's something very, very similar. And if you're familiar with, Madhyamaka, middle way analysis, Nagarjuna, or as we often talk about, looking for, where is the cup? Is the cup the handle? Is it the color? Is it the empty inside? It's none of these things. Where can you find the cup? Not at the top, not at the bottom. You say it's all these things together, but where is that all together? You still end up with the same problem. Is all together the top, the bottom? So most significant is to recognize this with respect to our own mind. And this is an extraordinary pith instruction that is really central to our practice. It's so simple, so beautiful. I think we can hardly hear it too often. And so I want to bring it to your attention again in light of what we have just said. So as you remember in the conversation in the Dharmadhatu Sutra, "200 monks walk out on Manjushri because they hear him saying that there's no attainment, there's no liberation. You don't actually get anything." And understandably, these monks have devoted their lives to accomplishing awakening. This is anathema to them, and they leave. But before that, Manjushri has had this delightful conversation with Shariputra, who's often the straw man, as you know, in Mahayana Sutras. So, of course, if you attain something, if you attain awakening, which definitely is available to us, that's the whole thrust of practice. But if we think of it as something to get, we have already put ourselves in a state of separation with it, separation from it. So that's not the ideal situation. We're just perpetuating a sense of self in our pursuit of nirvana. Tulsi Rinpoche once said to us, I think we were describing to him someone who, a friend of ours who was like, rushing to nirvana attainment. And he just laid back his head back and he said, well, anybody who's doing that is very far from it. But this is confusing to us because we have ordinary minds and because we are always, the perfection of effort, which is better translated as a delight in virtue, actually a delight in wholesomeness. Our commitment to the path does require dedication, commitment, stable attention, stable repetition of practice. So there's some tension here, but that's not our topic today. Our topic today is untangling the knot that seems to divide us from the world, the knot of separation. So if you attain something, then who attains it? There has to be a who attains it. Now remember, Buddha told Bhaya, when there is only the seen, in reference to the seen, there's no you there. There's just experience of seeing, which is no less vital and vivid. So we find this theme here as well. If you attain nirvana, well, the mind attains it. Body, not really. Although the body does also get awakened in another sense. That's also another topic. So Manjushri says, would you say, Venerable Ones, that the mind is blue or is it yellow? Is it red or is it white? Is it real? Is it unreal? These are each deep questions. They're each worth pondering one at a time. They're intellectually very simple, but we have to bring them to experience. If you look for your mind, what will you find? Does it have a color? Is it permanent? Would you say it's impermanent? Does it have form? Or would you say that it is formless? And the monks reply, oh, it doesn't have form. It cannot be shown. It has no appearance, and yet it is unimpeded. Bingo. It has no appearance. It's unimpeded. There's nothing between you and the seen or the heard. More significantly, there's nothing between you and your own awakening. Nothing hinders waking more than remaining unaware of what is already there without fuss or strain. How can we come to recognize this in our own experience? So Manjushri then asks the group, well, then, the mind that has no form and can't be shown, has no appearance, yet is unimpeded, has no dwelling, and is imperceptible. Can this be observed to dwell inside or outside or in between? Same as the Bahya Sutra. This tells us that this is a theme deep in the heart of the Buddha Dharma from the time of the Buddha. According to Mahayana, these are the very words of the Buddha. The mind is neither in nor out, here or there or in between. You can't do that with the mind. And the monks get it. They say no. So Manjushri, this is when he's emanating he looks like an ordinary monk to the monks who have left the teaching that Manjushri just gave. They don't know. Of course, they're talking to Manjushri himself. So in that case, is it established? They say no. Do you think then that a mind is not real and not established, can nevertheless be liberated? And suddenly they get it. Of course, there's liberation and awakening, but you cannot say that you attain it, that the mind, certainly not the ordinary mind you have right now, is not what attains it. The ego wants to attend its own funeral, Shugyam Trungpa famously said. We want to be there. Our ordinary mind wants to hang out and watch us get enlightened and maybe, develop a little ego around it too. But there's nothing there. It doesn't happen like that. By resting back into the pond, the ocean of our experience, as we do. So shortly, we'll have a few minutes break. You'll be observing your breath. We'll be sounding sound. And you'll have a chance to observe. Is there a knower of your breath? Of course, you know your breath. Can you separate your breathing from your knowing of breathing? When you sound hung in the practice, can you separate the sound hung from your hearing it? You can just have a little curiosity in the back of your mind. And at 1:00, we do our green tar practice in celebration of Losar. Everyone is invited today. Also, I'll give a transmission for it and brief instructions, and we'll do a short, simple, beautiful practice. Another opportunity to experience Buddha nature, green Tara, air, movement. It's movement in your mind. It's the movement in the leaf of branches of the trees outside. So please take this to heart. These are really pith instructions. They're directly related with all of our practices. Good to see you. We'll have a break now until 11. Look at the sky, just be easy. And I'll be back at 1 with our green tar practice. Love to you all. Share your merit. Bye, Christina. Didn't see you before. And Ken. Kaisu. Ciao.